13 ABC. Conklin and Company with 13 ABC Action News anchor Lee Conklin. First with what's happening behind the headlines. And Take 3, our panel of political analysts.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Conklin and Company. Today on the program, the state of the state. A chance for Governor Kasich to tout what he's accomplished and the road ahead, and what he's promising to do if he does get 4 more years. And a chance for his Democratic challenger to pounce. Let the race really begin. That and more on the way in Take 3 with Skylar Meadows and Tom Troy a little bit later. But first, really the stunner that came early this past week. The only head coach the Toledo Walleye have ever had announced he is stepping down, or was stepping down, effective immediately. And with that in mind, we wanted to bring in the general manager of the Toledo Walleye, the general manager of the Toledo Mud Hens, and the man who's got a big vision for downtown Toledo as well. So a lot of things on the plate for Joe Napoli, and we thought we'd bring you in for a couple of segments today.
Thank you.
Joe, good to see you, as always.
Yeah, same.
Let's go back to earlier this past week when Nick Vitucci announced that he was stepping down. A stunner perhaps to some people on the outside.
Sure.
But if you can, Joe, take us inside.
Yeah. We have thoroughly enjoyed our relationship with Nick, and that's going to continue into the future as well. We've worked with Nick for about 7 years, so a couple of years before we actually launched the Walleye, and you couldn't really find someone more passionate about hockey in Toledo than Nick. And I think what's happened over the last 2 to 3 weeks is, I mean, just to put it plainly, you know, it's possible to be burned out. And as we sat down with Nick and discussed that, I think it became apparent that, you know, he needed a little refresh, needed a little break, because he works so hard. I could never be as hard on Nick as Nick would be on himself. And those are the type of people you want to have working with you and for you, because their expectations are extremely high. And I think what happened over the last, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks, is that I think when you take a look at the stress level and you take a look at the expectations and the high expectations that he has of himself, he said, hey, you know what, I could use a little break, a little hiatus. And again, the quality of the person, when you look at Nick Vitucci, you want people like Nick to work for you forever. Because he's the type of guy that would say the organization comes first. I need a break. Yeah. And how do we go about doing this?
Sometimes you hear about the players, Joe, needing a change of scenery or needing a different face. In this case, yes, it's the coach saying that too.
That's right. Yeah. And you know, he again puts the organization first, and he should be commended for that. And we're going to keep. Nick's going to stay on. Oh yeah, yeah. He's got too much experience.
He's built a life here. Right?
And he's got way too much experience and too much value to provide the franchise.
Yeah, so. 5 years as the Walleye coach, the hiatus in between. That's right. When the club goes dormant, but the Storm coach before that. That's right. You know, a long career as a goalie, you know, the competitive fire. And the games that I attended, Joe, if I was close to the bench, you can see the competitive fire in someone and the nature. But one particular game, I didn't see Nick say a word. Yeah. He just looked at his card, and you could just see the fire burning within. I don't know what was said in between periods, but I have a feeling a lot was said. On that particular night, the Walleye got shut out. This year, to be frank, it's been
a rough year,
a very rough year on the ice, and that contributes to it all. So let's talk about the differences in the way this hockey team is run and the way the baseball team is run. You have 2 affiliations, the Red Wings and the Blackhawks.
That's right.
And of course with the Mud Hens, it's the Tiger situation. Big differences, are there not?
Yeah. Oh, they're dramatic differences. So when you take a look at our relationship with the Detroit Tigers, minor league baseball has operated the way it sits today for 50 or 60 years, purely developmental. And you have these players that basically the goal is to do everything within your power to get these young men promoted to the major leagues. So it's not unusual for wins and losses to be sacrificed for the development of the players. So what happens there is because that's been in place for so long, everyone knows that's the program. Hockey has changed into that program. So the last decade, AA hockey has become more developmental. So that's why you see more players assigned by the Red Wings and the Blackhawks to Toledo. But that's no excuse. What it comes down to is when you take those two, you factor that in, and you factor in Toledo's geography, and then you factor in another layer, which is any AAA club can call up any of our players that are on a walleye contract and call them up basically for a tryout.
You got somebody red hot, and boom, they could be gone.
Absolutely.
Tomorrow morning.
Absolutely. So having said all of that, we're not unique because there are other organizations that have dual affiliations. There are other organizations that are geographically well positioned for AAA clubs to call up their players. So we have to figure out that formula. We looked at it from a 5-year perspective. Actually, we looked at it from a 3-year perspective. The Blackhawks came and visited us after 3 years and said, you know, we love the relationship in Toledo, would love to stay. So we extended the agreement for 2 more years. Well, it's up now. It'll be up after the end of the season. And we're having a dialogue with both Chicago and Detroit at this point. One of the good things that's happened in our league is we've expanded into good markets, strong markets. One of the markets that is coming on for next year will be Indianapolis, which so happens to be a good market for Chicago and the Blackhawks. So we're having those conversations behind the scenes right now.
Yeah, and all of this, it sounds like, has been, I don't know about expedited, but really brought on by the fact that it has been a struggle. It's a struggle to win.
Yes.
And Joe, would you agree that hockey fans in Toledo want to see a winner more than baseball fans here? Because of baseball, it's the event.
There's a passion from hockey fans that is measurable in so many ways. So you're smiling. The fact is, I get the biggest kick out of, I'll get emails, we'll get Facebook postings, we'll get Twitter comments, and I think some of the fans think that we don't appreciate that. We actually love it, positive or negative. And the reason why even the negative ones are okay, which I've had my share of lately, is because
goes with the territory, right?
Yeah, but it also expresses their passion
no
for
doubt.
the team.
Right.
So, have we done things real well? We've done some things really well. We've done some other things pretty embarrassingly poorly, and we need to improve on those things. Well, when you take a look, you reflect back on the last 5 years, you look at all of the roster movement that we've had. You know, I'd say probably 40 to 50% of that was our own doing by having the dual affiliations, by realizing how. So here, this is going to sound. So Nick has done a really nice job of recruiting ECHL contracted players. Well, that's a double-edged sword, because if the guy like an Evan Rankin happens to be very good, well, he's only going to be in town for a year, maybe.
Move down to Rochester, Syracuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So and that's happened. Cody Lample, one of our fan favorites from last season. Cody goes to St. John's on a tryout agreement in preseason. It's relatively unheard of that you make a AAA team on a tryout agreement. So one of our best defensemen makes the team.
Thanks for the time.
Exactly.
Right.
Willie Coetzee, one of our better offensive players, has a season-ending injury in training
and
camp.
that's the nature of the beast, though. The injury is the absolute nature, as is the movement. Joe, we're going to come back. We're going to talk a little bit more. We're going to work into baseball and also downtown Toledo development as well.
That'd be great.
Come back on Conklin and Company right after this.